My name is Paul Vallone, and you are listening to 106.7 Wilmington's Big Talker. I'd like to welcome you to Guns, Politics, and Freedom, where each Saturday at 1 p.m. and each Sunday at 5 p.m. we give you the ammunition to better defend your gun rights. I'd also like to thank our sponsor, Hyatt Guns, America's largest gun shop. Check them out at hyattguns.com. In case you aren't familiar with me, I direct Grassroots North Carolina, or GRNC, since 1994, our state's most effective gun rights organization. As its director, I was involved in drafting and passing our original concealed handgun law. Since then, GRNC has gone on to engineer passage of concealed handgun reciprocity, our purchase permit bypass, Castle Doctrine and Stand Your Ground, the expansion of concealed carry into state and municipal parks, restaurants, public assemblies, educational properties, and much more. Grassroots North Carolina is exactly what the name implies, a grassroots collection of volunteers from all walks of life who share a common concern that our constitutionally guaranteed freedoms are being eroded. Check us out at grnc.org. That's grnc.org. Today, Guns, Politics, and Freedom will discuss the 3 pending gun control bills in Congress, bills that could get floor votes in the U.S. Senate as early as next week. What do they do? Will they become law? And if they do, what will it mean to you? And because they could be voted on next week, please stay tuned because we need you to act immediately. And more importantly, these bills have to be stopped now. If, for example, the pending ban on so-called assault weapons, semi-automatic firearms, passes the Senate, it will slide through the House like greased lightning on a purely partisan vote. The U.S. Senate is literally our last chance to stop these bills. But first, welcome to Day 59 of the demolition of America. You could be forgiven for sticking your head in the sand and tuning out everything the Biden administration, God, how I hate those words, that the Biden administration has done to systematically destroy the United States. And frankly, I can't imagine that what the leftists running Biden are doing to this country is anything other than intentional. The fact is, they just couldn't be that stupid. Now, if you're like most good and honest citizens, you are saying things like, don't they know that terminating thousands of jobs on the Keystone Pipeline in the middle of a pandemic will only exacerbate the suffering of a workforce already suffering? Or don't they know they are creating a crisis of human suffering on our southern border, with thousands of children being trafficked by drug cartels and then locked in detention facilities, all because the administration has sent a clear signal that our border is now wide open to illegal immigration? Or most recently, don't they know the so-called universal background checks the House just passed and sent to the Senate, or the so-called assault weapon ban about to be voted on in the Senate, won't reduce crime, that they only serve to punish law-abiding citizens for the misdeeds of criminals? Well, you ask these questions because you have good intentions, because you've been taught by good and well-meaning parents that others have good intentions too. But the unfortunate answer is whether the leftists using Joe Biden as a hand puppet know that their policies are increasing suffering while damaging individual liberty. Yes, they do. They know exactly what the impact of those policies will be. How could they not? How could they possibly be that stupid? Well, maybe AOC could be, but anyway. I can already hear the leftists saying it. Aha, Vallone is a whacked-out conspiracy theorist. But I'm not espousing a grand conspiracy theory. It's just like-minded leftists doing everything their dogma demands of them. As one sage put it, you don't have to be a member of the choir to sing from the same piece of sheet music. But what can the leftists hope to achieve with these self-destructive policies? To answer that question, you have to consider how the left thinks. You have to remember some of the teachings of that quintessential radical, mentor to Hillary Clinton, and inspiration to Barack Obama, Saul Alinsky. I'm writing a book of activist tactics for conservatives and have consequently done lots of research into old Saul and his book Rules for Radicals, which has become doctrine for the American left. So to understand what the left has in mind for our country, I want you to leave behind your old way of thinking and to think like the left does. And the first principle of leftism, Marxism actually, is that to create the great socialist utopia they envision, they must first destroy the existing society. When they advocate defunding the police, their goal is chaos. When their policies foster homelessness, their goal is chaos. And when their open border policy overwhelms even the existing social welfare system they have created, yes, their goal is chaos. Only by destroying our society can they create their society. Do you think they don't know that cancel culture destroys free speech? Do you think they don't know that increasing taxes will tank our economy? Do you think they don't know that a prolonged and unnecessary COVID lockdown won't produce more suicides? Do you think they don't know that teaching critical race theory in schools, critical race theory teaching minorities that they will never succeed, that the deck is too stacked against them and they will forever be victims, and that it is your fault simply because you are white? Do you think they don't know that divisiveness will increase racially motivated violence? They don't just know these things, they are counting on them. But, you object, all of those things are immoral. They can't all be that immoral, can they? Well, let's go back again to that mentor of leftism, Saul Alinsky. In Rules for Radicals, he makes it clear that he regards the classic moral question of whether the ends justify the means as, and I quote, meaningless. He goes on to posit that rules for ethics and means are essentially free of ethics. Alinsky said, and I quote, "The real and only question regarding the ethics of means and ends, and is and always has been, does this particular end justify this particular means?" Of particular interest is his third rule of means and ends, quote, "In war, the end justifies almost any means." That sounds reasonable enough until you also consider that he said, and I quote, "All life is warfare." Now, applying the transitive law of logic, what he effectively said is, in life, the end justifies almost any means. So the justification of the left is that because they are the anointed, because they are so much smarter than you and I, because they have a vision of the great socialist utopia to remove mankind's inequities, and because in life the end justifies almost any means, then destroying American society, and with it the lives of millions, becomes an acceptable means to their utopian goal. Now, in case you've watched a press conference with Biden's mouthpiece, Jen Psaki, they don't even bother to hide it anymore. On the rare occasion, for example, that the media even asks about, say, the crisis on the border and why the media is being prevented from witnessing firsthand the horrific detention centers, she smugly replies with a platitude that the administration remains committed to openness. Yeah. We're actually reaching a point at which the left doesn't even bother to lie anymore. They don't have to. The media basically covers for them. What's more, if the Democrats manage to pass H.R. 1, the Orwellian name for which is the, quote, For the People Act, the dysfunctional society I just described would become permanent because, far from being for the people, H.R. 1 would codify in federal law all of the election irregularities that contributed to what has ostensibly been called a Democrat win in the presidential race, including such gems as allowing 16-year-olds to vote. Now, right now, it appears that the only means we have to stop H.R. 1 And the gun control I will describe later in the show is in the U.S. Senate, where not a simple majority, but rather 60 of 100 votes are required for cloture, which describes the vote to end debate and actually take a vote. I'll talk more about that later, but this is the modern exercise of the filibuster you've heard so much about. Right now, we're going to take a short break, but grab a pen because in our next segment, I will have an assignment for you to stop leftist legislation in Congress. You are listening to Guns, Politics, and Freedom on Wilmington's Big Talker, 106.7 WilmingtonBigTalker.com. After a short break, we will discuss what you need to do to stop gun bans that might be voted on in the U.S. Senate as early as next week. My name is Paul Glone. You are listening to Guns, Politics, and Freedom today on Wilmington's Big Talker. Our show is sponsored by Hyatt Guns, America's largest gun shop. Check them out at hyattguns.com. Before our break, we were discussing how the political agenda of the left is actually designed to fracture American society in order to increase governmental control and ultimately replace our culture with a totalitarian socialist model. They know that cancel culture damages free speech under the First Amendment, that open borders and increasing taxes destroy economic prosperity, and that so-called green energy is neither reliable nor sustainable. Now, we'll also begin to discuss how the U.S. Senate was designed by the framers to be the more deliberative, less impulsive chamber of government. They did that by requiring not a simple majority of 51 votes to pass legislation, but instead a supermajority, originally 67 votes, but changed to 60 votes in 1975, that are required to end debate on a bill. That is called a vote of cloture, to end debate and then actually vote on the bill itself, which actually requires only a simple majority, 51 votes of 100. The attempt to extend debate and to deny the cloture vote is called a filibuster. And in their zeal to thrust Marxism on America, it is the practice of the filibuster, the moderating influence to ensure radical proposals are not passed, that the Democrats have threatened to end. They threatened to do so simply by changing the rules of the Senate, which can be done with a simple majority of 51 votes, with Vice President Kamala Harris breaking the 50-50 tie between Republicans and Democrats. But the Democrats have not yet ended the filibuster. Yet some quisling Republicans support giving radicals in the Senate who are under the direction of virulently anti-gun Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, giving them what they want in an ill-conceived effort to appease them in order that they not vote to end the filibuster. But as Neville Chamberlain discovered in World War II, appeasing fascists doesn't work. Instead, Republicans should stand strong and use the filibuster to deny Senate leftists the legislation to undermine the Second Amendment and rig our system of voting, exactly as our founding fathers envisioned when they designed our republic. And that is the message I want you to deliver to Senate Republicans. We are now relying on 50 Republicans to stop the leftist anti-freedom agenda. Might the Democrats respond by ending the filibuster? Maybe. But if they do, they will expose their naked power grab for what it is, namely their scheme to end our republic and replace it with a totalitarian people's republic. In other words, you must convince Republicans to stand strong and not to do the work of the Democrats for them by trying to appease them. Fortunately, Mitch McConnell has promised a scorched earth policy that would all but shut down the Senate if the Democrats follow through on their threat. Let's hope he follows through on that promise. Moreover, at least one Democrat has said he will not vote for either ending the filibuster or passing gun bans under consideration. That Democrat, Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia, may be the last of the so-called blue dog or conservative Democrats. But Manchin is also under a lot of pressure to reverse that position and has recently made equivocating noises. So we need you to contact not only your senators, and not only Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, but also Senator Joe Manchin, and tell him that you are depending on him to stop the leftist power grab. To do that, you can find 2 legislative alerts to click on at the top of our homepage at grnc.org. Again, that is grnc.org. I will repeat that later in the program. And what gun control do we need to stop? Well, last week the U.S. House, under the leadership of San Francisco Democrat and devout leftist Nancy Pelosi, passed 2 gun control bills which sound quite reasonable until you realize their full implications. First, we have H.R. 8 for so-called universal background checks. And who can oppose background checks for gun purchases, right? Keeping guns out of the hands of criminals, right? Well, the answer should be you. H.R. 8 would require all gun transfers, be they sales or gifts or inheritances or whatever, to be processed through the FBI's National Instant Background Check System, or NICS. You may recall that NICS was created by the 1993 Brady Act and required background checks for sales from licensed dealers, but did not apply to private sales. Under H.R. 8, you would have to go to a dealer and pay him to conduct a background check, if you can find a dealer who will do a check for a gun he didn't sell, even for a private transfer. The only exceptions would be for loans or gifts, not sales, by the way, between immediate relatives or temporary loans at a designated shooting range or when hunting. So this bill isn't as bad as universal background check bills in the past, right? Wrong. After the Brady Act passed, Sarah Brady of Handgun Control said of their next and far more draconian gun bill that the Brady Act was the, and I quote, nose of the camel under the tent, describing Brady 2 as, quote, the rest of the camel. Well, this is the nose of the camel because rest assured that those transfers not included in H.R. 8 will be immediately described as loopholes, which the opposition will try to close by adding still more transfers that have to be done through NICS. But that isn't the worst thing about H.R. 8. To understand that, you have to understand that the real reason leftists want all gun transfers processed through the computerized background check system has nothing to do with reducing crime. Hell, back in the early 2000s, a literature review by the National Academy of Sciences found no impact of background checks on crime. And a study by the U.S. Department of Justice found that few criminals purchase guns from lawful dealers or gun shows. Instead, they steal them or buy them illegally off the street. And gun control advocates know that. They know this will have no impact on crime. It's not about crime. It is about registering as many transfers as possible through NICS, so that when they can finally turn NICS into a proper gun registration system, they will know where to find the guns they intend to ban. Because the fact is, you can't ban what you can't find. But NICS isn't a gun registry, you say, and moreover, the Brady Act that created NICS makes it illegal to use the system to register guns. But anyone who says NICS can't be used to register guns should know that it already has been. The idea is that after the FBI runs the computerized background check, called in by the dealer, the transaction record for that background check must be expunged within 72 hours to prevent the system from being used as a registry. So imagine our surprise when, during the Clinton administration, then Attorney General Janet Reno refused to expunge the records, retaining them indefinitely for what she called audit purposes, but in truth creating a de facto gun registration system. The NRA sued, saying that the DOJ was illegally registering guns, correctly saying it, but they lost in court when the judge declared that unless NICS registered all guns, which of course isn't possible, it wasn't a gun registration system. And by the way, you might recognize the name of the judge who made that anti-gun determination. It is the guy Joe Biden just appointed as Attorney General, Merrick Garland. Now, ignoring for a moment rumors that the ATF is already scanning in Form 4473s from dealers to create an illegal registration system, the day H.R. passes is the day gun control leftists will start trying to pass legislation to eliminate the prohibition against using NICS to register guns. And once they get a registration system in place, they will use it to find guns they want to ban, just like California and New York already did. After New York passed the misnamed SAFE Act, they just started calling people who were newly prohibited from owning guns, telling them to turn them in or face prosecution. Is that America? Again, H.R. 8 already passed in the House, meaning that we must stop it in the Senate by denying it a vote of cloture. I'm asking you to go to grnc.org. At the top of the page, you will find two banners telling you who to contact, how to contact them, and what you need to say. Now, right now, we're going to take a short break. After we come back, we will continue discussing H.R. 8 and also Senator Dianne Feinstein's latest assault weapon ban. My name is Paul Vlone. You are listening to Guns, Politics, and Freedom today on Wilmington's Big Talker. Our show is sponsored by Hyatt Guns, America's largest gun shop. Check them out at hyattguns.com. In our last segment, we were discussing gun control that has passed the House and now resides in the Senate, giving us effectively one last chance to stop it. H.R. 8, again, already passed the House. It's now in the Senate. What I'm asking you to do is to go to grnc.org, and at the top of the page there are two banners telling you who you need to contact, how to contact them, and what to say. Responding to an alert will take you less than 5 minutes. Will you please spend 5 minutes to preserve our freedom? The second bill passed by the House and now in the Senate is H.R. 1446, which Democrats claim will close the Charleston loophole. Since every gun control bill needs a poster child, they cite the shootings in a Charleston church by a sociopath who bought the gun he used after his NICS check timed out. You see, if a NICS check is stalled for 3 business days, the dealer has the option of making the sale. Gun control advocates want to extend that to 10 days, after which you would have to make an application to the DOJ to complete the sale, with no guarantee when or even if they would approve the sale. For starters, this will turn out to be a burden for many of the thousands of buyers whose names may be confused with someone else, delaying sales. But that is a minor problem compared to this. What happens when anti-gun Merrick Garland or some other tyrant decides to simply shut down NICS for an indeterminate period of time? Because sales would be effectively barred without NICS checks, gun sales nationwide could be shut down in an instant. Again, go to grnc.org and stop this bill in the Senate. The next gun control bill we want to talk about is S-736, Senate bill. This is Senator Dianne Feinstein's so-called assault weapon ban. Although this bill was introduced a week ago, there is no bill text for it on the congressional website yet, which may or may not be an accident. The comments which follow are made from a reading of the draft legislation linked from Feinstein's press release. Bear in mind that the bill could be worse than what I will discuss because, frankly, deception is standard operating procedure for the left. First, let's make a couple of things clear. We are not talking about machine guns, which have been restricted since 1934. We are talking about semi-automatic firearms, which fire one bullet per pull of the trigger and are functionally identical to common hunting guns. What differentiates these guns is how they look. Plastic stocks, pistol grips, and other cosmetic features, which we will discuss momentarily. But gun control advocates want you to believe we are talking about machine guns. Back in 1988, a memo by Josh Sugarman, formerly of the National Coalition to Ban Handguns and presently executive director of the Violence Policy Center, is the father of the plastic gun controversy, and he wrote the memo laying out their strategy, saying, and I quote, "The semi-automatic weapon's menacing looks, coupled with the public's confusion over fully automatic machine guns versus semi-automatic assault weapons, anything that looks like a machine gun is assumed to be a machine gun, can only increase the chance of public support for restrictions on these weapons." It's all a deception, folks. A lie designed to play divide and conquer by convincing hunters and sportsmen that they didn't want, that the gun control advocates don't want to ban their guns. They only want to ban those evil old assault weapons. In truth, there is no such thing as an assault weapon. What the moniker is intended to evoke is the image of an assault rifle, which is a fully automatic firearm generally available only to the military and law enforcement. I cannot overstress that whether or not you own an AR-15, this bill is aimed at you. What the gun ban advocates are doing is going for the low-hanging fruit. Once they get it, they will be back for your shotgun or your lever-action rifle, I assure you. Now, to give you background, in 1994, a Democrat-controlled Congress passed a piece of legislation with the Orwellian name, the Public Safety and Recreational Firearms Act. Never mind that the Second Amendment has nothing to do with recreation. For the first time in history, Congress not only published a list of guns that were banned, either by name or by features, but actually had the gall to publish a list of guns you may own. So Congress passed the bill as part of the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act of 1994. But, and I don't often say this, God bless the NRA, which inserted a sunset into the bill, meaning that if Congress didn't reauthorize it in 10 years, it would expire. And expire it did, but not without much gnashing of teeth in Congress. The Senate debated it, Teddy Kennedy added ammunition bans, and all manner of gun control was hung onto the bill. But thanks to thousands of activists like yours truly, the bill failed, and the so-called assault weapon ban was finally dead. Oh, and I should note that in a debate I participated in, even an agent of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms admitted that during its 10 years of existence, the ban did nothing to reduce violent crime. But, like the undead, Dianne Feinstein's semi-auto ban is back, and she's learned a trick or two since 1994. Like the 1994 ban, Feinstein's current monster bans the manufacture, transfer, and importation of 205 nasty old assault weapons by name. Like the 94 ban, it publishes a list of some 22 guns you are allowed to own. Thanks, Diane. And like the 94 ban, it bans other guns not by name, but by features such as pistol grips, collapsible or folding stocks, flash suppressors, bayonet mounts, to prevent those drive-by bayonettings, mind you, and grenade launchers, never mind that grenades have been prohibited since 1934. But this is where it starts to get interesting. Where the 94 ban restricted any semi-automatic firearm with a detachable magazine and 2 or more of those nasty features, the current version bans any gun with one of those features, meaning that if your hunting rifle happens to have a pistol grip, you own an assault weapon. And like 1994, S-736 bans what it claims are high-capacity magazines holding more than 10 bullets, even though such magazines, like semi-automatic firearms, have been around for 100-plus years. Actually, with semi-autos, it's more like 125 years, but anyway. We should also note that one of the evil features of assault weapons is now a threaded barrel, meaning if your semi-auto hunting rifle has a threaded barrel for a sound suppressor, you now own an assault weapon. Incidentally, the restrictions would apply to any semi-automatic pistol which has a threaded barrel, such as is commonly used for either a muzzle brake or sound suppressors. Now, here is the good news. The oh-so-generous Dianne Feinstein will let you keep the grandfathered semi-automatic firearms you own, for now, provided you lock them away in a safe or with a trigger lock, rendering them useless for self-defense, of course. Now, here's the bad news. Although she will let you sell or otherwise transfer the guns to others, for now, each transfer must go through the National Instant Background Check System. Are you seeing a pattern here? Transfers must go through NICS so they can register the transfer and know where to find it when they inevitably ban it. And, oh yes, did I forget to mention that although you can sell or transfer the guns, you may not do so with the magazines for those guns. Now, like most gun control features, Feinstein's assault weapon ban bans far more than assault weapons. Do you have a little Ruger 22 pistol that happens to have a threaded barrel? You have an assault weapon. Got an M1 carbine, either original or reproduction? Well, do you know that for a short period of time the government fielded an M2 carbine, identical to the M1, except it was fully automatic, making your little M1, which has none of the nasty old assault weapon features, into one of the banned guns. Why? Because it's a semi-automatic version of a fully automatic firearm. Or how about shotguns? Got a Mossberg Shockwave-style semi-automatic firearm? It's not a shotgun with a bird's head grip? Yep, that's an assault weapon. Or what about those little 410 shotguns like the Taurus Circuit Judge that have a revolving cylinder? Well, any shotgun, semi-automatic or not, with a revolving cylinder is banned. Okay, so much for the semi-auto ban. What you see here is a creeping definition of what comprises an assault weapon. In a moment, we'll talk more about this bill and how we are planning to defeat it. But right now, we have to take a short break. You are listening to Guns, Politics, and Freedom. After our break, we will return with still more information enabling you to better defend your gun rights. My name is Paul Vallone. You are listening to Guns, Politics, and Freedom today on Wilmington's Big Talker. Our show is sponsored by Hyatt Guns, America's largest gun shop. Check them out at hyattguns.com. In the previous segments of today's show, we discussed 3 draconian gun control bills that must be stopped in the U.S. Senate. The first 2 have already passed the House. H.R. 8 would require all gun transfers, be they sales or gifts or whatever, to be processed through the computerized National Instant Background Check System, or NICS. Beyond its obvious inconvenience, H.R. 8 is intended to move us closer to universal gun registration, so that in the future they can find whatever guns they intend to ban. The House also passed H.R. 1446, which would allow the FBI to deny NICS background checks for essentially unlimited periods of time, allowing them to shut down gun sales nationwide at any time they wish. The third bill, S-736, was introduced by Dianne Feinstein in the Senate and is a ban on semi-automatic firearms that goes well beyond its stated intent. This bill would ban even common semi-automatic pistols like a Glock or a Smith & Wesson M&P, or even a little Ruger 22 pistol if the pistol has a threaded barrel, which is typically used for muzzle brakes or suppressors. Far from dealing with what the left calls assault weapons, even little revolving cylinder 410 gauge shotguns like the Taurus Circuit Judge would be banned. The bills must be stopped in the Senate because, unlike the House, The Senate still requires a supermajority of 60 votes, a vote of cloture, to end debate and vote on the bill. With only 50 votes, 51 if Kamala Harris breaks a tie vote, Democrats may not have enough votes to pass the bills. If Republicans hold strong, and yes, we expect to lose a few rhinos, that's Republicans in name only, like Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski. So I need you to respond to our 2 legislative alerts on our homepage, which tell you who to contact, what to say, and take only a few minutes of your time to defend your freedom. You can find the alerts at grnc.org. Again, that is grnc.org. Again, S-736 for banning so-called assault weapons must be stopped in the Senate. If it gets to the House, Pelosi and the Democrats will pass it by a simple majority that is all that's necessary in the House, after which it goes to Biden for inevitable signature. Go to grnc.org. At the top of the page, you will find 2 links leading you to everything you need to weigh in with your senators, to Republican leadership, and to Senator Joe Manchin, Democrat from West Virginia, the one remaining conservative Democrat who might still have the power to stop this nonsense. grnc.org. In North Carolina, the political landscape is considerably cheerier than in D.C. As you may recall, thanks to patriots like you, we won the elections in North Carolina and actually increased the number of conservatives in the General Assembly, as well as winning numerous judicial races up to and including in the North Carolina Supreme Court. Several pro-gun bills have been introduced and some are moving, including HB 49, which makes it easier to renew concealed handgun permits, and is sponsored by Representatives George Cleveland, Harry Warren, Jay Adams, and my own Mike Clampett from Swain County. Then we have that bill, by the way, passed the North Carolina House and is now waiting for a hearing in the Senate. HB 134 and its companion bill, SB 43, would permit concealed carry in churches that are co-located with educational facilities. In the House, it is sponsored by Representatives Jeff McNeely, Jason Swain, and our own Jay Adams, while in the Senate it is sponsored by Senator Dan Britt, Warren Daniel, and Todd Johnson. As you may recall, although nothing prohibits firearms in churches in North Carolina, if the church sponsors a school, it becomes educational property where firearms are prohibited, even if the school is not in session, and even if it's not in the same building or is on a separate part of the property. The bill passed last year but died when anti-gun Governor Roy Cooper vetoed it, and several Democrats who first voted for it switched their votes, denying the bill the supermajority it needed to override Cooper's veto. This year, the bill has passed both chambers, albeit with different bill numbers. That should allow Republican leadership to avoid a conference committee and send the bill directly to Cooper. Cooper will undoubtedly veto it again, and Republicans still don't have 2/3 of the seats in the General Assembly to override the veto, so we will be focusing on Democrats in marginal districts to support the bill. Other pro-gun bills which have not yet received committee hearings in the North Carolina legislature include HB 145, which would offer protections to gun owners served with domestic protection orders, or what they call 50B orders, by allowing them to store firearms with dealers rather than having them stored by sheriffs. The bill is sponsored by Representative Jay Adams, Keith Kidwell, and Alan McNeil. Incidentally, now in his second term, Representative Kidwell is proving to be a bright star in the gun rights community. I have high hopes for him. HB 189 would prohibit state and local governments from enforcing whatever gun bans the Biden administration might pass. For reasons obvious, this type of legislation is moving in several states. HB 189 is sponsored by Representatives Kidwell, Bobby Hanig, Edward Goodwin, and Jay Adams. Then we have HB 197, the Constitutional Carry Act, something that Grassroots North Carolina has been trying to pass for several years now. The bill would eliminate the need for concealed handgun permits to carry concealed if you are doing so for a lawful purpose. And the bill is sponsored by Representatives Keith Kidwell, Bobby Hanig, Edward Goodwin, and Mitch Setzer. Then we have HB 200, the Lifetime Concealed Handgun Permit bill by Representative Jay Adams. We did discover a flaw in the bill because, pursuant to legislation that Grassroots North Carolina helped pass in the early 2000s, you can use your concealed handgun permit to bypass the need for a pistol purchase permit and to bypass a NICS check. So, unfortunately, you can only do that if the permit is valid for no longer than 5 years. So we are looking at amending the bill to include a 5-year renewal option if you intend to use the bill or the permit rather, to bypass the need for a pistol purchase permit. Let's see. We expect additional pro-gun bills to be introduced soon by gun rights stalwart Representative Larry Pittman, in what unfortunately he says will be his last term in the General Assembly. Incidentally, we are also working on addressing what I have come to call the Baker problem, wherein some of our sheriffs in urban areas, principally Sheriff Baker in Wake, McFadden in Mecklenburg, and Rogers in Guilford County, have been obstructing and delaying pistol purchase permits and concealed handgun permits using COVID-19 and the Biden-related gun-buying frenzy as rationale. For nearly 2 decades, Grassroots North Carolina has attempted to repeal our Jim Crow-era pistol purchase permit law, which was originally passed in 1919, a year after Missouri passed it, which was the year after race riots in St. Louis. It was originally designed to prevent blacks from getting guns. Yet the North Carolina Sheriff's Association continues to defend the law, claiming sheriffs need discretions to deny permits to applicants who may be mentally unstable but otherwise are not prohibited by law from owning guns. They use the good moral character clause for this. I call this the tinfoil hat theory, as in Jimmy Joe Bob wears a tinfoil hat to keep out the alien brain rays, but now he wants a pistol purchase permit. That's the example I keep getting from these people. But their example, even if it happened often, which I doubt, is specious because in most counties, particularly urban counties, sheriffs don't even know the applicants. In fact, North Carolina is the only state that still has such a law, so I asked Sheriff David Mahoney, the president of the Sheriff's Association, why this isn't a problem in the other 49 states. I didn't get an answer. Equally specious is the sheriff's argument that purchase permits allow them to issue permits to people wrongfully denied by NICS or if NICS is shut down. But on this bizarre example, I invite the sheriffs to cite specific examples since I doubt it has actually happened. Now, and what's more, particularly given that the purchase permit actually requires a NICS check. So this is a specious argument at best. In summary, I strongly suggest you subscribe to GRNC Legislative Alerts to help us pass these and other pro-gun bills. Again, you can subscribe to GRNC Legislative Alerts by going to grnc.org and click on the link about halfway down on the right side of the page. But whatever you do, you must contact legislators to defeat universal gun registration and so-called assault weapon ban legislation that is moving in the United States Congress. Again, go to grnc.org. Responding will only take you a few minutes. So please, please take a few minutes to defend American liberty. My name is Paul Vallone. You've been listening to Guns, Politics, and Freedom on Wilmington's Big Talker, 106.7, WilmingtonBigTalker.com, where each Saturday at 1 p.m. and each Sunday at 5 p.m., we give you the ammunition to better defend your right to keep and bear arms. Please check out our sponsor, Hyatt Guns, America's largest gun shop at HyattGuns.com. I also encourage you to check out my website at gunspoliticsandfreedom.com, where you can find both my writings and earlier editions of the show. See you next week.